welcome viewers to the original Personal Injury Law Show. This show that talks about everything to do with personal injuries in the workplace, on the roads, public liability, medical negligence, asbestos, superannuation, you name it, the whole box and dice. My name's Tony Carbone, personal injury lawyer with over 25 years experience. With me tonight I've got Nunzio Tartaglia, a partner at a law firm.
Tony, Alice, viewers, good evening.
And Alice O'Kane, a very senior lawyer at a law firm.
Tony, how are you? Nuns?
So Tony, tell me what's in the news.
Look, there's a lot of stories in the news tonight, and our topic, viewers, is torts in sports. And on that issue there, we'll be going to the John McCarthy case very shortly. But to start us off, we've got a case of injured babies compo. There's been over $25 million spent on compensating infants or children that are born with all sorts of defects and confidentiality clauses. What's your take on this, Alice?
Oh, look, Tony, the area of obstetrics is a really fraught area in terms of medical negligence claims. And you do get a lot of claims. They've got some statistics in that article about where the claims are coming from and what areas of the medical profession they focus on. But particularly with babies, it's a really tragic sort of an area, especially when you've got lifelong illnesses or just, conditions like cerebral palsy or things like that. And it's a very tragic area. It's really difficult area.
Nunzio, what do you think of it?
Considering with these cases, you know, sometimes these infants need care for the remainder of their life, and these cases can be huge. Like I know our firm had a case worth just over $4 million.
4.5 million.
So you're not. I don't think 25 million is a lot of money spent, which I think is a good thing because you know we don't want too many of these cases.
Sadly, a lot of them go uncompensated, which is a big impost and burden on the families.
Yeah.
That's right.
Alice?
Look, Tony, it's true. A lot of babies do go uncompensated, or families as well. But the real difficulty, Tony, is the constraints of medical negligence law in general. As you boys will know, you've got to show that medical professionals in the field have the opinion that the conduct of the doctor involved was negligent. It's a high standard to meet, and we all know doctors don't like selling out other doctors.
And Nunzio, a lot of the problems is a causative effect. Causation is very hard to prove.
Oh, look, it's almost sometimes impossible, and as Alice said, it is difficult at times to get a doctor to give an opinion about that, and that's why there's not a hell of a lot of these cases around. So, look, the figures could be higher if you were to be able to prove negligence in these type of cases.
That's right.
The next story I want to talk about is a lot of people getting killed or severely injured in driveway deaths. People that are reversing and bang, they run over their child or they run over someone else. They're talking about fitting cameras in cars. Nunzio.
Look, I think it's a great concept, and if it's going to prevent deaths to children or just unfortunately innocent bystanders, I just can't see any downfall in that. And I must admit, I think it's a great initiative.
It's a small price to pay, really, for a lot of...
Alice, do you realise it's illegal to be reversing out of your driveway?
No, I didn't realise that. I did realise it's illegal to reverse across the road, but I did think you could reverse out of your own driveway.
How do you get out of your driveway?
Yeah.
Well, I think if we would have followed the bylaws properly, we should be reversing into the driveway and then driving out of the driveway.
Really?
There you are.
I think that's right. But it just shows you that it's very, very... when you're dealing with driveways, which seems like a simple, innocuous task, there's these days cyclists, you got pedestrians that are running, and it's close calls a few times, isn't it?
No, there isn't. Look, if it prevents one death, then it's worked.
That's right.
I want to talk about this John McCarthy story. It's made headlines. We're talking about torts in sports and the obligations of organisers. What's your take on the John McCarthy story, Nuts?
Look, obviously it's tragic for everybody involved. His family, the club, and the AFL and football fraternity. But it's just really unfortunate. It's sad, and I suppose it does bring into light, though, what's the obligation of these football clubs? I know the Western Bulldogs, who were there at the time, had a security liaison, if you want to call that, and I don't think Port Adelaide did. And does that bring an issue into light?
Alice, what's your take?
Tony, look, this is a really sad case. He was so young. They're overseas on an end of season trip. But what really intrigues me is that it's the very first death on an end of season trip of this kind. And as Nunzio is saying, there was no security detail. There was a distress call to the girlfriend. He'd been separated from the group. There's a lot of complicated factors in this case.
The sad thing about it is that, okay, he died on this occasion, but there's been a lot of instances where sports people have actually been severely injured. Why wouldn't they have a wingman? Why wouldn't you have someone that has to stay with you at all times?
Look, I agree, and as we know, these boys' footy trips can get out of control. And I think West Coast a couple of years ago, Chad Fletcher had a drug overdose. And look, the Bulldogs obviously thought it was prevalent enough or a danger enough to have someone accompanying him, and Port Adelaide, arguably could have done the same thing.
Isn't it bizarre that there was 10 people on this trip and only one of them seemed to have lost himself? What were the others doing? Why weren't they paying attention to their mate?
I think they're all having a good time, Tony, end of the year, and I think that, to be honest, I think it's probably the last thing on their mind.
Yeah.
Do you think there's responsibility or liability on the AFL?
Look, I think the AFL, I think that's difficult, to be honest, because where does it stop? They're under 24/7 duty to make sure they're looked after. I think that's.
What about the Port Adelaide Football Club?
Look, Tony, I think the club may have some problems along the line here, because if it's a club-sanctioned trip, then you're looking at what's the degree of supervision and what's the degree of duty that they do owe. But that said, there are a lot of factors in this case, and a lot of footy players, I would imagine, would object to having a wingman. It takes the spontaneity out of the trip. You're going to have a good time. You feel supervised all the time. But equally, we were talking earlier about video cameras in cars.
What do we know about the facts? I mean, it appears that he was on a roof and he's tried to climb down on top of some palm tree to get down. Is that correct?
Yeah, look, obviously he was disorientated, and that was proven by the fact that he called his girlfriend and I think wanted to go home and lost the boys. And I think once I do the inquest into maybe what's in his body, that might tell a
big story.
A few
Tell
more
the
things.
story.
So.
Very sad case, viewers, and obviously it's going to unfold in weeks and days to come. So,
Just quickly on the sports one, Tony, there's one that was just recently in the news, which is the inquest into the 1989 89 deaths at the FA Semi-Cup final.
That's right.
And there was an inquest into that, and I think it's just been proven that it was basically all of a sham, and the police had made wrong statements.
That's right.
And now there is some obligation on the actual stadium, which is interesting as well.
And what was it with the stadium, Alice?
They were alleging some structural problems with the stadium, that it wasn't equipped fully to hold the amount of spectators who were in. There was a lot of jostling, drunk patrons, people without tickets. It was very disorganised. And I believe now they're looking into a civil case to deal with the whole matter as a whole.
It's pretty alarming that a structure collapses like that, isn't
That's
it?
right.
But
It's
the
very
police
alarming.
said we're blaming the patrons, that they're all drunk, and that they were to blame. And obviously now it's all come to light, which
Well, viewers, that's all we got in the news for this week. But after the break, we're going to come back to this Torts in Sports. So please stay tuned.